War. War never changes. Not to be that guy, but I heavily disagree.
Come any closer and I'm liable to stick you with my sticking knife.
Sweeps here. For those who are unaware about the Fallout universe, well, I'm not a Fallout channel or buff myself, but all you gotta know is the series is based upon a world of ours that has dealt with nuclear fallout, filled to the brim with radiation, weird characters, giant monsters that'll rip your face off, and of course, Vault Tech.
You can secure your family's future by reserving a spot in a state-of-the-art underground vault from Vault-Tec. That's right, Bob. Act now, and your family can wait out the horrors of nuclear devastation. And Doris, the vault will have all the amenities of your modern-day home, and it's attractive.
Now you may be wondering, my friends, if I'm not a Fallout YouTuber, why am I bringing it up? Well, it just so happens there's a Fallout TTRPG system, and frankly I wish I could play it. But play it, not run it. Ah, the curse of being a forever DM. And today's story is actually featuring this very game, and I figured, hey, I've been in the Mojave Wasteland for a little bit. I heard about this story from other YouTubers and figured, let's give it the old sweeps try, eh? Content warning though, this one's gonna be a little messy. I recently bought the Fallout TTRPG and was excited to play with my friends. Let's call them Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo. We all set on a time and place to host a Session 0, as the game uses different rules and mechanics than what we're used to in D&D 5e. I also discovered that, aside from Charlie who tried Fallout 4 years ago, most of my friends had never played a Fallout game and only understood the setting through cultural osmosis. This meant, on top of explaining how to play, I was also going to be my friend's official introduction to Fallout. With all that in mind, I called together a setting and a story, and I decided to have my players all start as vault dwellers to give a matching character and player surprise to discovering the wasteland. And what would Fallout be without its vaults and Vault-Tec's many horrific experiments inside the vaults? Of course, I could start my friends in a control vault, but where's the fun in that? After a lot of brainstorming, I decided this particular vault's experiment would be twofold. First, homosexuality was not only accepted and encouraged inside the vault, but heterosexuality was outright illegal and punishable by prison or even death for repeat offenders. This social shift would be rationalized by the absolute need to control population and not to overexhaust resources, and all children were born through in vitro fertilization, except that is only the setup for the experiment. In truth, Vault-Tec had robots teched away that were secretly manipulating the genetic codes of the dwellers' eggs and sperm to see how far a human genome could be pushed and still remain viable. This would be the reason for the players could have maxed out stats, weird quirks like green hair, or be ungodly ugly. To get the players out into the wastelands, I planned two possible events based on how Session 0 would go. If my players wanted to have a more lighthearted, beer and chips kind of game, a highly popular performer would suddenly escape from the vault in the middle of the night, and the players would be selected to go out and rescue/return said performer. If they were up for a more gritty Mad Max sort of game, the vault would be rated a la Fallout 2, with them only having survived or escaped. Session 0 finally rolls around and we all start testing the rules, building the characters, fulfilling roles in the vault, and explaining the story, themes, and concepts. Before I go further, a bit of a necessary introduction for my friends. As I mentioned earlier, my friends and I played 5e off and on before, so we're no strangers to TTRPGs or role-playing. Out of the three pillars of 5e, Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie enjoy an equal balance like myself, with a favoritism for role-playing. Delta and Echo lean hard into favoring roleplay above combat and exploration, but are okay with them on occasion. My friends also prefer open sandbox games over modules or linear stories, as they don't enjoy feeling that they are forced to do things their characters wouldn't do. For example, they don't like random combat encounters when playing 5e, as they feel that they're being forced to fight something and would rather have made the decision to engage the enemy on themselves. With all that in mind, I explained that they will eventually leave the vault for one reason or another to enter the wastelands, and about how the Fallout wastelands are filled with starving beasts, insane raiders, and other dangers.
Lucky what we have here, ladies. Another unsuspecting ponce.
So while I can limit the combat and random fights, they still will be inevitable, to which they all say they're okay with. Next, I asked them if they want a more laid-back kind of game or a hardcore setting. They didn't hesitate to go for the former. Lastly, I explained the life inside the vault and how their lives generally went, the struggles and problems their characters were used to, as well as the atmosphere inside the vault. Out of the six of us, Alpha, Bravo, and myself are straight, Charlie is bi, and Delta and Echo are gay. They are also all willing to be open about their sexuality and sexual history once they get to know you. The Vault life setting presented definitely surprised them, since I'm the most prudish out of our lot, but they were more than happy to get started, especially Delta and Echo. I will admit, once Session 0 was over, I was curious as to how they would react to a world like the one I described. Would Alpha and Bravo rebel against being punished for who their characters loved or how they normally lived? Would the Charlie, Delta, and Echo stand against the punishments of any stray characters and NPCs, or would they reflect the prejudice they received in IRL? Would they bring the Vault's prejudice with them into the Wastelands?
Next time on Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, I can't imagine how this can go wrong. Once Session 1 officially started, my friends immediately took to Vault life. Alpha was a doctor, Bravo was a chef, Charlie became a maintenance technician, Delta was a performer, and Echo was in security. Everyone was given chances to play with skill tests, action points, and the 2D20 system. And as we are all adults, I was open to letting them have much more fun with flings, one-night stands, and whatever else they wanted to get up inside the steel tomb of the Vault.
Please assume the position.
Well, I never allowed any actual ERP, as role-playing every encounter would have taken all day. Charlie, Delta, and Echo were excited to freely be as open about their characters' love and sex lives as they wanted, and Alpha and Bravo were more happy playing out their lesbian fantasies.
If you're feeling tired, we could always find a bed.
At the end of the session, the atmosphere of the Vault had become that of a free love society so long as it wasn't between a man and a woman and it didn't interfere with the Vault work. And while I did have Echo and Charlie stumble across two breeders exchanging kisses once, they simply looked the other way. I end the session by having the Vault's star performer give one last grand concert in front of the entire Vault. Needless to say, everyone was super hyped for Session 2.
Meet me upstairs. I'll try to leave you in one piece.
After 2 weeks of impromptu one-on-one about the characters, text chats about in-game events, surprising amount of out-of-game character building, Session 2 starts. Side note, I have never got my friends this invested into their characters before, so I was absolutely pumped. As the party wake up in beds not their own and are fighting off hangovers from the concert after party, they discover the entire Vault is abuzz as the star performer has gone missing, and it's even rumored that they went outside the Vault. But how can that be? Where would they go? The Vault's been closed and sealed for hundreds of years. How did they get out? After talking amongst heartbroken fans and confused friends about the situation, the Overseer announces that the performer did indeed leave the Vault, and the Overseer was going to choose a select group of individuals through lottery to form a rescue party, and you can guess which lucky 5 individuals were selected. And here's where everything went sideways. All my friends said, no. I was thrown for a loop. Scrambling to get things back on track, I had the Overseer implore to them the importance of morale inside the Vault, the necessary service that the performer was doing for the Vault, and how it gave their duty to help in a time of crisis, blah blah blah. Again they said, no. Each of my friends gave in-character reasons as to why they didn't want to leave. Alright then, player agency and all that, if they didn't want to leave, they didn't have to leave. Willingly. On to Plan B. Now, it should be obvious to anyone who's watched any and all D&D YouTubers will spot the problem being brought up here. Agency over planning. As a DM myself, I totally understand wanting to give your players the choice and option to want to play the game however they want. That is totally fine, but there's a big caveat to that. It has to be done within reason. This is more directed towards players than DMs, but as someone who's run a good number of games for various players, I've had to prepare a whole lot of materials, get the setup, make sure everyone's schedules line up, and of course, make sure I have a lot of notes prepared for many possibilities that the players can take. So when you're a player, you need to immediately remind yourself that your DM is human and may not be able to completely account for every possibility that you want to take, especially when it's stated and agreed upon beforehand that these players would leave the Vault. Now, if this wasn't agreed upon beforehand, I can totally see how the DM could be in the wrong, since he's about to railroad his players, but that's not the scenario that we're being presented with. If you agreed to play Curse of Strahd, then you have to go to Barovia. That's the whole point of the game. If you agreed that you'd have to leave the Vault, then guess what? You are going to have to leave the Vault, since that's what the DM informed you all ahead of time and thus what they focus their efforts on. I understand that everyone's got their own style of play, but as someone who's clocked in well over 100 hours of Fallout New Vegas in the last couple weeks, there's plenty of choices and ways of dealing with things.
Wow. You sound like you really do need some help. Look, I can help you out, but you can't do anything stupid. I mean, you can't.
I also gotta say, very sneaky there, OP. That motivation with the performer sounds awfully familiar.
We are all feeling this loss. But I want to remind every pony that Velvet Remedy chose to do this. She chose to leave her home, to abandon us, her family. She betrayed my trust and she betrayed yours.
Yeah, Fallout Equestria rang a bit of a bell for me there, and there's nothing wrong with that. Again, you're listening to the guy who essentially turned Strahd into Dio because his players kept making the Curse of Dio joke. The rest of Session 2, the Vault was completely depressed. Work was getting done, people would argue and rage at each other at the slightest irritation, some had to be literally dragged out of their rooms to perform their daily duties, they could hear the performer's songs on loop behind closed doors. Posters of the performer around were either turned into funeral memorials or vandalized. The players themselves looked down upon. How could they abandon the performer? How could they be so selfish? Didn't they care about the performer? Etc, etc. Needless to say, my friends weren't all too happy with me at the end of Session 2, especially Delta and Echo. They all felt I was unfairly punishing them for the actions they chose, and they shouldn't be bullied into playing in a way they didn't want to. I explained that they were right. I was being harsh on them, but it was the consequence of their choice. The Overseer told them how important the performer was. They were also aware of the fact through various pictures, NPC chatter, and the giant concert at the end of Session 1 how important the performer was to the Vault, and since they had chosen not to leave the safety of the Vault, their fellow Vault dwellers viewed their characters as having openly abandoned the Vault Star. I also reminded them that back in Session 0, I explained to them that the plan was for them to leave the Vault, and they all agreed that they were okay with that. Begrudgingly, they all agreed to turn back time and go after the performer. Nope! They made the decision, and I said I was going to respect their choice in Session 3 if they would give me a chance, and if they still wanted to play, to which they all reluctantly agreed. Sorry to interrupt again so soon, but I had to say that reading this story, I've got a few issues with both the players and the DM. The DM I have less of an issue with though, but it's still an issue, and you'll see why once we get to the next part of the story. I understand that immersion is an important aspect to games, and reverting back to a previous save file is probably one of the biggest immersion breakers out there for players. But if your players are willing to give you an out, take it! Either that, or the moment that these players said no, that's when you should have brought up they agreed to leave the Vault in the first place. Again, I understand that immersion is important, as well as player agency, but that doesn't mean they get to break what they had already agreed to.
I am so sick of doing everything wrong!
And I remember a while back, I talked about a shorter story, you know, before my hard drive decided to burst into flames, that there was a PC who kept on pushing an NPC and being a total jerk to him. And then the NPC shot him! Actions and choices have consequences. That is the point of playing in a role-playing game. To me, this just raises a big red flag for these players who seem to not be able to understand that you can't just do whatever you want all willy-nilly all the time and expect that the world isn't going to sit by and not react. Session 3. It's been several days since the performer left. The Overseer had sent out a different team. Life was returning to the Vault slowly. Delta and other small performers within the Vault tried to pick up the slack of the Star or take their place. Half the Vault was in deep depression, with Alpha having to fix a few attempts. Ugh. Charlie had to pick up the slack of their fellow workers as they didn't see much of a point in continuing without the performer. And the Overseer gave a mandate to Echo to lock up any and all weapons, chems, and alcohol to prevent more problems. Again, there was almost no sex for the players. There were a few conflicts to solve and a few skill checks to make, but there was very little RP from my players, making the session boring for everyone. This caused some of my friends to say they didn't want to play since they weren't having fun anymore. I pleaded with them to give it one more session. I promised it was going to be much more interesting in the next session.
Sensationalist hooey, cooked up by superstitious yokels, seeing phantoms of their own imagining.
Session 4. A few more days had passed and people had moved on. My players are finally getting their groove on again with other residents, although there are still a few who outright refuse them because of their decisions not to leave. My players finally began to start perking back up and getting into their roles again. The only odd thing that happened in the day was Charlie suddenly discovered a random encrypted file in a Pip-Boy that wasn't there yesterday, to which they failed their 5 difficulty check to hack it open. After a few hours of play and a few more in-game days, everyone is about back to where they were in Session 1. Until, that is, they hear a loud grinding noise coming from the vault door. Then, BLAM! The vault door explodes off its roller, and the vault is suddenly becoming a wash of bullets, blood, and death as crazed humans in tribal-like armor pour into the vault, heralded by a hulking suit of black power armor, wielding a minigun. I give the players one objective: escape alive.
Hog killing time!
Well, remember how I said my friends, especially Delta and Echo, were upset about being called out for not voluntarily leaving the vault in Session 2? Woo boy! They're those two absolutely livid. I had betrayed their trust. They got attached to their characters in the vault, and I was just burning it away because I didn't like them having fun. I was killing their characters because I was spiteful. I was ruining a place they could be happy in. I was bullying them into playing a certain way against their will. I was a terrible GM. I was a terrible friend, and went on and on and on. Nothing I said reached them. Arguing was drowned out with angry shouts and slurs about being a homophobe. I had never seen my friends that legitimately angry at me before. Even Alpha and Bravo, who were miffed about what had just happened, were completely taken aback by the outburst. Charlie ducked their head and got out of the crossfire. It's been a few weeks, and while I'm on speaking terms with my friends again, Delta and Echo refused to play another TTRPG with me ever again. Looking back, I do see why Delta and Echo were angry. I had unintentionally made a safe space for them to be open, appreciated, and accepted, where they could be as much themselves as they wanted to be and could be. It wasn't that they didn't want to venture into the wasteland. I don't know, pal, it kind of seems like they didn't. It was that they didn't want to leave the place they felt most comfortable. But on the other hand, we had all agreed to play a certain game, and my players had decided without me that they wanted to play something else. Well, it was their decision to stay in the vault, a decision I upheld. There was also no game or story if they stayed. To me, it was like if your 5E group suddenly said they wanted to be blacksmiths and refused to go adventuring, but still expected you to be as the DM toward a compelling story-driven campaign. I also wasn't okay with the endless flirting my friends until they all felt satisfied or got bored. Was I in the wrong for having raiders attack the vault after my friends were opposed to leaving on their own session 2, or is it okay for me to feel like my friends blew the game's events out of proportion? I mean, we're still friends, it just hurts to see someone you know and care about get so angry at you. I want to make it clear that while I have criticized OP in this video, I do not think that they are totally in the wrong about this. I most certainly do not believe for a second that they are homophobic, that is to be sure. I mean, sure, I could say that having a wasted session 3 just to illustrate to your players that they made a terrible decision, especially with the NPCs trying to hit the delete button on themselves, or forcing them out of the vault in a violent manner, maybe aren't the best ideas, and actually exacerbate the situation. But I digress. To me, it's honestly very rich that Delta and Echo claim that you violated their trust, when it was the players who had broken the agreement that you all had in the first place. TTRPGs are a cooperative gaming experience, and this was agreed upon at the beginning of the game that they would leave the vault. Again, the moment that the word no left the lips of the players, a conversation should have been had about dealing with this, the expectations of the game, what the party agreed upon, and what they wanted to do from this point on. What really makes me side with the OP is the reaction that Delta and Echo had. I honestly have to say that it was going way too far, because at the end of the day, this is just a game. Did the DM and OP make mistakes? Yes, but to me, calling him homophobic is way too much. So with that, I think we'll call the video. Give me your thoughts down below, everyone. I want to hear what you guys say. And a thumbs up would help the video, and help me out too.
Another settlement has sent word that they need our help. I'll mark it on your map.